The rain that brought the truth. It was one of those nights when the rain seemed endless. Streets glowed under the reflection of city lights, and thunder rolled far in the distance. KeanuReeves sat quietly in his car, parked outside Alexandra Grant's art studio. He watched the rain slide down the windshield, each drop racing the other, vanishing into nothing. For weeks, he had been carrying something inside, a truth he couldn't say out loud. To the world, he was calm, kind, unshakable. But tonight, his silence felt heavier than ever. Inside the studio, Alexandra was still painting. He could see her through the window, her hair tied up messily, her hands covered in paint. She looked tired, but beautiful in that quiet, soulful way that had always drawn him in. She didn't chase fame, didn't care about lights or cameras. She only cared about truth, the kind you painted, not the kind you spoke. He hesitated before stepping out of the car. The rain soaked through his coat almost instantly, but he didn't care. He needed to see her, to speak before his heart swallowed his words again. When he pushed open the door, the smell of paint and rain filled the room. Alexandra looked up, surprised. "Keanu, it's late. You shouldn't be out in this weather." He smiled faintly. "I couldn't sleep." She set her brush down, wiping her hands on an old rag. "What's wrong?" He looked around at her unfinished paintings, all light and shadow, emotion and silence. "You ever feel like there's something you need to say but the world won't let you?" She studied him quietly. "All the time. That's why I paint." He nodded, his eyes soft. "And what if words are all you have left?" Alexandra frowned gently. "Then maybe it's time you use them." He sat down on the stool near the window, rain echoing softly outside. For a while, he said nothing. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "I'm tired, Alex. Tired of pretending that I'm fine all the time. People see me smile. They call me strong, humble, lucky. But they don't see what it costs to be everyone's calm." She walked closer, sitting across from him. "Keanu, you don't owe anyone perfection. Maybe not," he said, "but they expect it. The world doesn't want to see me break. They want a story, the man who survived pain, who never gets angry, who forgives everything. And I let them believe it because it's easier than showing the truth." Her voice was soft, almost breaking. "What truth?" He looked at her then, really looked at her, his eyes dark and gentle. "That I'm lonely, Alex. That I've spent years surrounded by people, but still feeling like I'm standing in the rain alone." Her breath caught. She wanted to reach for him, but something in his expression told her not to, not yet. "And you know what's strange?" He continued. "The only time I don't feel alone is when I'm here, watching you work. You don't ask me to be anything. You don't want the actor or the stories or the quiet strength. You just see me." Silence filled the room, deeper than any words. The rain outside grew louder, almost matching the rhythm of their hearts. Alexandra finally spoke, her voice trembling. "You don't have to be alone anymore, Keanu. Not if you don't want to." He smiled sadly. "I want to believe that. But everyone I've ever let close eventually leaves, or life takes them away." She reached out slowly, placing her paint-stained hand over his. "Then maybe stop waiting for life to decide and choose for yourself this time." He looked down at their hands, her touch warm against his cold fingers. For a long time, he said nothing. Then, in a voice so quiet it almost vanished under the rain, he said, "I'm afraid, Alex. Not of losing fame or fortune. I've lost those before. I'm afraid of losing peace. You bring me peace." Her eyes filled with tears. "Then hold on to it, Keanu. Hold on to what's real." The thunder rolled again, and for the first time, Keanu didn't flinch. He stood up, walked toward the window, and looked out into the storm. "It's strange," he murmured. "I've spent my whole life running from storms. Maybe this time, I just needed to walk into one." She stood beside him, silent, watching the city lights blur through the rain. He turned to her slowly, his voice breaking just a little. "I came here to tell you something tonight, something I've been keeping to myself." Alexandra waited, her heart pounding. He took a deep breath. "Alex, I think I've been in love with you for a long time." The room went still. The sound of rain seemed to disappear. Alexandra's lips parted, but no words came out for a moment. It was just them, two souls standing in the soft golden light of her studio, finally speaking what the world had never heard. and as the rain poured harder outside, Keanu finally let his heart breathe. The silence, after the confession words hung in the air like something fragile. Alexandra stood frozen, her brush still in hand, paint dripping slowly onto the floor. Keanu's confession echoed between them, quiet, trembling, real. For years, they had shared a bond that never needed to be explained. They laughed in small moments, walked in silence, and understood each other without trying. But now everything had changed. Keanu looked down, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't plan to say that tonight. I just couldn't keep pretending anymore. Alexandra's heart raced. You mean it? He nodded. I mean every word. She didn't know what to say. Her mind was full, her chest heavy. She loved him too, but she had built walls to protect him from gossip, from the world, from herself. She turned away, trying to hide the tears in her eyes. Keanu, she said softly. You shouldn't have said that. He froze. Why not? Because love isn't safe for you, she whispered. You've been through enough pain. The world watches your every move. If they see us, they'll twist it, use it, destroy it. He stepped closer, his tone calm but firm. I don't care what the world thinks anymore. I care about what's true. And the truth is, you're the only thing that makes sense to me. She looked at him, her eyes filled with fear and tenderness. You think love will fix you? He shook his head slowly. No. I think love will remind me that I'm human. A tear rolled down her cheek. And what if I can't love you the way you need? He smiled softly. Then I'll still be grateful that you tried. The storm outside grew stronger. Thunder cracked across the sky, and for a moment, the power flickered, leaving only the soft light of her lanterns. The studio glowed in gold and shadow. Alexandra sat down, her voice trembling. Keanu, I've spent years trying to heal other people through art, but I never learned how to heal myself. And you deserve someone whole. He knelt beside her, taking her paint-stained hands gently. No one is whole, Alex. Not me, not you. We're all just learning how to hold our broken pieces together. She closed her eyes, letting his words sink in. You make it sound so simple. He smiled faintly. It's not. It's terrifying. But it's real. For a while, they sat there in silence, just listening to the rain. Then Alexandra whispered, What happens now? Keanu looked out the window, watching the lightning flash across the sky. We stop running from what we feel. She shook her head. The world won't understand. Maybe not, he said quietly. But maybe it's time I stop living for the world. He stood up and walked toward one of her paintings, a portrait of two figures standing apart under falling rain. He stared at it for a long time before speaking again. You painted this before I told you, didn't you? She nodded slowly. I didn't realize it at first, but yes, I think I painted us. He turned back to her with a gentle smile. You always knew before I did. She looked down. I wish I didn't. He frowned. Why? Because love changes everything, she whispered. And I'm afraid of what we'll lose when the world finds out. He reached for her hand again, his voice steady. Then let's make a promise. No matter what happens, we won't lose the kindness between us. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with tears. You always talk about kindness like it's easy. He smiled. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Then something unexpected happened. The door creaked open. A gust of wind blew through, scattering her sketches across the floor. Keanu turned quickly, but no one was there. Just the wind and rain. Alexandra bent down to pick up the drawings, but one paper caught Keanu's attention. It was a sketch, him, sitting in her studio weeks ago, looking out the window exactly as he was now. He stared at it in silence. When did you draw this? The night you came after the award ceremony, she said softly. You looked lost. I wanted to remember that moment, not because you were sad, but because even in silence, you looked like someone searching for peace. He smiled faintly. And did I find it? She looked into his eyes. You just did. For a brief second, everything felt still. The rain slowed, the air softened, and time seemed to hold its breath. Then, quietly, Alexandra stood up and whispered, You should go before the storm gets worse. He hesitated, his heart heavy. Alex, she smiled gently. Please, not tonight. I need time to breathe. He nodded slowly, respecting her space. I'll wait, he said. As long as it takes." As he walked out into the rain, she watched him from the window. His coat was soaked, his shoulders low, but there was something peaceful about his steps, like a man who had finally stopped running from his truth. She whispered to herself, "You don't even know what you've done to my heart." Outside, Keanu looked up at the night sky, rain falling against his face, and whispered back, as if she could hear him, "Maybe for once. The storm is a good thing." Neither of them knew that this night, this quiet confession in the rain, would become the turning point that would change both of their lives forever. The distance that tested love days after that rainy night felt different. Alexandra tried to go back to her normal routine, painting, teaching, running her small art foundation, but everything seemed quieter now. Her studio, once full of energy, felt like it was holding its breath. Every brushstroke reminded her of his voice, his words, the way his eyes softened when he finally let the truth out. She hadn't seen Keanu since that night. He had kept his promise. He gave her space. But space had a way of turning into silence, and silence often grew heavier than words. One afternoon, while she was cleaning her brushes, she noticed something outside her window. There, leaning against the door, was a small brown envelope, soaked slightly from the rain. She opened it carefully. Inside was a folded note written in his familiar, neat handwriting. "Alex, I said I'd wait, and I meant it. But waiting doesn't mean disappearing. I'll be nearby when you're ready. You once said art heals. Maybe love does too, in its own quiet way." She held the letter close to her heart. It felt like warmth in the middle of winter. But not everyone saw their story as beautiful. News outlets had started whispering again. Someone had spotted Keanu walking near her studio late at night. Headlines appeared online. "KeanuReeves visits mystery woman again," and "secret romance," or "secret project." Alexandra's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Sponsors for her upcoming exhibition began asking questions. "Is this true? Is your work funded by him? Are you using this for publicity?" The attention that once celebrated her art now questioned her integrity. That night, she sat alone in her dark studio, the rain tapping softly against the windows again. She whispered to herself, "This is why I told you love isn't safe." And as if he had heard her thoughts, her phone buzzed. It was him. She hesitated before answering. "Keanu." His voice was calm, gentle, but she could hear the worry behind it. "I saw the articles. I'm sorry, it's not your fault," she said quietly. "I just don't know how to make it stop." "You don't," he said softly. "You just live through it. That's easy for you to say," she whispered, her frustration breaking through. "You're used to people watching you. I'm not. I just wanted peace." He paused for a moment before replying. "So did I, Alex. And then I found you." Her eyes filled with tears. "And now I'm losing myself in something I don't know how to protect." He sighed. "Then maybe I should step back for a while. Not because I want to, but because maybe it'll give you the quiet you need." Her chest tightened. "You'd really do that? If it helps you breathe again," he said. "Yes." She didn't reply. The silence between them was painful, heavy, but beneath it was love. The kind that hurt because it was real. The next morning, true to his word, he disappeared. No calls, no letters, no messages. Weeks turned into months. Alexandra poured her heart into her paintings, each one filled with longing and quiet strength. Her next exhibition was titled Distance. Every canvas told a story: rain, letters, waiting, and light breaking through clouds. On opening night, the gallery was packed. Critics praised her emotional depth, calling it her most personal work yet. But behind her calm smile, her eyes searched the crowd again and again, hoping he would appear. He didn't. After the event, she stood outside under the soft drizzle, staring at the city lights. She whispered, "You said you'd wait, but where are you?" Just then, a familiar voice spoke from behind her. "Right here." She turned, and there he was, standing in the rain again, just like that first night. Her breath caught. "You came." He smiled softly. "I told you, waiting doesn't mean disappearing." She wanted to be angry, to tell him how hard it was without him. But when she saw the look in his eyes, gentle, apologetic, full of love, her anger melted away. "Your paintings," he said, his voice quiet. "They're incredible. Every stroke feels like a heartbeat." She laughed weakly. "They're about you." He smiled. "I know." They stood in silence for a moment, rain falling between them. Then he said, "You told me love isn't safe. You were right. But maybe it doesn't have to be. Maybe love isn't supposed to protect us. Maybe it's supposed to break us open just enough to make us real." She looked at him, eyes trembling. "And what if it breaks us completely? Then we'll rebuild," he said. Together, the rain grew heavier. He reached out his hand slowly, as if giving her a choice. She hesitated for a moment, then took it. The world around them disappeared. There were no cameras, no reporters, no expectations. Just a people in the rain, choosing each other despite everything. He pulled her close and whispered, "I don't want to live behind silence anymore. If the world wants a story, let them have this one." To people who refuse to stop believing in something good. She smiled through tears. "You make it sound so easy." He shook his head softly. "It's not easy, Alex. But for you, it's worth it." And for the first time, she didn't pull away. She rested her head against his chest as the rain washed away the noise of the world. What neither of them knew was that someone had already taken a picture from across the street. One that would go viral by morning and change everything again. Asterisk. The picture that changed everything. Next morning, Alexandra woke up to the sound of non-stop notifications buzzing from her phone. She rubbed her eyes, half asleep, but when she saw the screen, her heart dropped. Her face and Keanu's were everywhere. The photo was all over the internet. It showed them standing together in the rain, holding hands under the soft glow of streetlights. Her head was resting against his chest, his arms wrapped gently around her. The caption beneath read, "KeanuReeves confirms secret romance on rainy night." She froze, staring at it. There was no privacy left now. The whole world had witnessed the one moment that wasn't meant for cameras. Within hours, reporters gathered outside her studio. Fans left flowers, but the media left microphones. Questions flooded the air. "How long have you been together? Is it true you inspired his new film? Are you planning to marry him?" Alexandra couldn't breathe. She shut the blinds, locked the doors, and tried to hide from the noise. But the internet had already turned her life into a story she couldn't control. By noon, her art sponsors began calling. One of them said carefully, "Alexandra, the attention might hurt our foundation's reputation. We may need to step back from your next project." Her throat tightened. "I understand," she said quietly, even though she did in single quotes. When Keanu heard about the photo, he was already at his movie set. His assistant showed him the image, and his heart sank. He left immediately, ignoring questions from reporters. That evening, as rain fell again, he stood outside Alexandra's apartment. When she opened the door, her eyes were red from crying. "Keanu, they took everything." She whispered, "Our quiet, our peace. It's gone." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "We'll get it back, Alex. I promise." "How?" she asked, her voice trembling. "They're saying I used you. That this was all for publicity. They're calling me a liar, a manipulator." He clenched his jaw. "You don't owe anyone an explanation." "But they won't stop," she said. "The messages, the reporters, the hate. I can't even go outside without someone asking about us." He took her hands, his voice calm but steady. "Listen to me. I've been through this before. Fame doesn't see people, it sees stories. But we don't have to play along. We just have to stay kind and keep living our truth." She looked at him, her tears slowly falling. "You make it sound simple." He smiled faintly. "It's not, but it's the only way to survive it." She sighed deeply and sat down. "Maybe we made a mistake." Those words cut through him like a knife. "A mistake," he repeated softly. She buried her face in her hands. "Not loving you. Never that. But believing the world would let us love in peace." He sat beside her quietly. After a long silence, he said, "Maybe the world doesn't decide our peace. Maybe we do." Her eyes met his. "What if we lose everything, Keanu? Your career, my work, our privacy?" He smiled gently. "Then at least we'll still have something real. I'd rather lose everything for the truth than live forever pretending." She stared at him for a long moment. There was no fame in his eyes, no glamour, only sincerity. He reached into his coat and handed her a small box. Inside was a silver pendant shaped like a raindrop. Engraved on it were 3 words, "We stay real." She ran her thumb over the words, her eyes filling again. "You did this," he nodded. "The first night it rained. I knew we'd need something to remind us who we are when the world forgets." She smiled weakly. "You always think ahead." He shook his head. "I just believe in what's worth keeping." Outside, the rain softened. For a while, they sat in quiet understanding. But the peace didn't last long. That same night, a talk show host aired an exclusive segment claiming to have proof that Alexandra had leaked the first photo herself for attention. The accusation spread like wildfire. Comments poured in, some defending her, others attacking her mercilessly. Alexandra's phone rang again. This time, it was her mother, her voice trembling. "Honey, are you okay? They're saying terrible things." "I'm fine, Mom," she lied softly. After the call, she sat in the dark, staring at the pendant in her hand. When Keanu came back from taking another call, she whispered, "They'll never stop, will they?" He walked over and knelt beside her. "Then we stop waiting for them to." "What do you mean?" "We tell our story, the truth, not through interviews, not through the media, through your art. Let them see us the way you see us, not the way they twist it." Her eyes widened. "You do that?" "Yes," he said. "If love brought the storm, maybe love can calm it too." She looked at him. The man the world saw as a hero, but who, right now, was just a human trying to protect her peace. "Okay," she said softly. "Then let's show them the truth." And so began their most daring decision yet, to turn their pain into something beautiful. What they didn't know was that their plan would uncover a deeper betrayal waiting in the shadows, one that neither fame nor love could prepare them for. The betrayal behind the storm. For a few days, Keanu and Alexandra stayed hidden away, quietly working on their plan. They wanted to show their truth through her art, a collection called Beyond the Noise, where every painting told their story without saying a word. It was meant to heal, to remind people that love could still be pure, even in chaos. But as the exhibition neared, something unexpected happened. One night, while Alexandra was setting up the gallery, she received a message from an unknown number. It was a screenshot, an email thread between her old assistant and a well-known gossip site. The message read, "The next set of photos will be ready tomorrow. She thinks Keanu is protecting her, but the story will break her first." Her body went cold. She felt dizzy. The assistant who had once promised loyalty was the one leaking everything, every photo, every rumor, every private detail. She ran outside and called Keanu, her voice shaking. "Keanu, someone inside betrayed us. They've been selling our story." He was silent for a moment before asking softly, "Are you sure?" "Yes," she whispered. "It's someone I trusted." "Then don't let them win," he said calmly. "Truth doesn't die because someone lies. It just waits." But even his voice couldn't stop the storm that followed. The next morning, a new headline flooded the internet. Exclusive: Alexandra Grant's secret plan to use KeanuReeves for fame. Leaked emails prove it. They weren't real, but they looked real. Edited messages, twisted words, and fake conversations filled the screens of millions. People turned. The comments were cruel again. "She played him. Poor Keanu, always picking the wrong woman. Guess she was acting all along." Alexandra locked herself in her studio, unable to face the world. When Keanu arrived, he found her sitting on the floor, surrounded by torn canvases. "They ruined everything," she whispered, her voice breaking. "My work, my name, my peace. I didn't do anything wrong." He knelt beside her, lifting her chin gently. "Look at me," he said softly. "They can ruin your name, Alex, but not your truth. And the people who matter, they'll see it." "How?" she asked, tears falling. "How do you fight something this big?" He took her hand, not with anger, with grace, with truth, and with one last storm. She frowned. "What do you mean?" "We go public," he said. "You and me. We speak together, not to defend ourselves, but to remind people what real love looks like when it's tested." She shook her head. "They'll twist your words again." He smiled softly. "Then let them. At least they'll hear my truth before they try to bury it." The next day, a quiet video appeared on Keanu's verified social page. No dramatic lighting, no fancy editing, just him sitting beside Alexandra in her paint-covered studio. He spoke slowly. gently. For a while now, the world has been telling our story for us. They called it scandal. They called it publicity. But it's not. It's love. The kind that gets messy, the kind that hurts, but the kind that stays. Alexandra didn't break anything. She built something beautiful, and I stand with her. Alexandra looked into the camera, her voice trembling. People think love is about being perfect. It's not. It's about showing up, even when the world misunderstands you. Keanu showed up for me, and I'll never stop showing up for him. The video lasted less than 3 minutes, but by the time it ended, millions had seen it. Within hours, it spread everywhere. Fans began posting messages of support. Even reporters called it the most honest moment in Hollywood. But the biggest surprise came the next morning. Keanu's team discovered who was behind the fake leaks: Alexandra's former assistant. Working under a media contract, the evidence was handed to the authorities, and the truth came out. Every message, every photo, every twisted detail had been manufactured to create chaos. When the story broke, the world shifted again. This time, not with gossip, but with apology. People wrote letters, fans sent messages saying, "We're sorry we believed the lies." And just like that, the noise began to fade. A week later, Alexandra reopened her exhibition Beyond the Noise. Crowds came not just for her art, but for the message: forgiveness, resilience, truth. One of the pieces stood out above all the others, a painting of two figures standing under rain, holding each other, while light broke through clouds above them. Beneath it, in soft handwriting, were the words, "Some storms are worth standing in." As people admired the painting, Keanu stood quietly in the corner, watching her. When she finally looked his way, he smiled. "You see, the storm didn't destroy you. It showed who you are." She walked up to him, eyes full of emotion. "And who are we now, Keanu?" He took her hand, his voice low and steady. "We're just two people who learned that love doesn't need to hide, even when it rains." And somewhere in that moment, under the soft glow of her art and the warmth of their silence, the world outside finally stopped watching, not because it lost interest, but because it had found what it was looking for all along: something real. The night the world finally understood, the night of the final exhibition, was calm and clear. The rain that had once haunted them was gone, replaced by a soft evening breeze. Lights from the gallery shimmered against the glass windows, and the crowd waiting outside stretched around the block. Reporters, fans, artists, everyone wanted to witness the moment that had already started to feel bigger than gossip, bigger than fame. Inside, Alexandra stood quietly near her favorite painting, the one of the two figures holding hands under the storm. She wore a simple gray dress, her hair tied loosely, no makeup, no pretense. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted a small card at the bottom of the painting. That read, "Truth always finds light." She heard a familiar voice behind her. "You did it, Alex." She turned, and there he was, Keanu, dressed simply, no suit, no flash. His eyes were soft, proud, and tired in the way only someone who had fought long battles could be. "We did it," she said quietly. That as people began entering the gallery, a hush fell over the room. It wasn't the usual noise of excitement. It was respect. Cameras lowered, voices softened. For the first time, the world wasn't watching them like celebrities. They were watching them like people. Keanu walked beside her, stopping at each painting. One showed him sitting in silence by her window. Another showed her painting while rain poured outside. Every piece told a chapter of their journey: the loneliness, the whispers, the betrayal, and the healing. An old journalist approached them, his tone softer than usual. "Keanu, Alexandra," he said, "you've both changed how people see love in the public eye. How did you survive everything?" Keanu smiled faintly. "By remembering that love isn't something you prove. It's something you live, quietly, every day," Alexandra added softly, "and by forgiving. Not just others, ourselves too." The journalist nodded, moved. "Do you think people will finally leave you alone now?" Keanu chuckled quietly. "I don't want them to leave us alone. I just hope they start looking at their own lives instead of ours. Maybe they'll find something real too." The reporter smiled and walked away, leaving them in peace. As the night went on, something beautiful happened. Strangers began writing small notes and leaving them on a board near the entrance. Messages like "Thank you for reminding us what love means, and I called my mother after watching your video." Alexandra read one that made her eyes fill with tears. It said, "Your story made me believe in kindness again." She turned to Keanu and whispered, "We did more than survive, didn't we?" He nodded slowly. "We healed." Later that night, when the crowd finally left, they stayed behind in the empty gallery. The lights were dim now, and the city outside was quiet. Keanu walked over to her final painting, the one titled "Some Storms Are Worth Standing In." He stared at it for a long moment. "This one," he said softly, "it's my favorite." She smiled. "Mine too." He looked at her, his voice low. "You know, I used to think rain meant sadness. Now it just feels like a reminder that beauty can still fall from the sky." She stepped closer, resting her head against his shoulder. "You always find poetry in pain." He laughed quietly. "Maybe that's because you taught me to see it." They stood in silence for a while, just listening to the faint hum of the city outside. And then, Keanu whispered, "I never thanked you properly for seeing me before the world did." She looked up at him. "You don't thank someone for seeing what's real." He smiled. "Still, thank you." She touched his cheek gently. "And thank you for not giving up when everything tried to break us." He leaned in, resting his forehead against hers. "The world can take everything, Alex, but it can't take the truth." Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall again, soft, slow, peaceful. Alexandra smiled. "It's raining again." Keanu looked out the window, his eyes calm. "Good," he said softly. "The story started with rain. It's only right that it ends with it too." They walked outside hand in hand, letting the rain touch their faces. Flashes from distant cameras sparkled for a second, but neither cared. There was no more hiding, no more pretending, just two people who had learned that vulnerability was not weakness, but strength. As they walked down the quiet Paris street, Alexandra whispered, "Do you think people will remember this?" Keanu smiled faintly. "Maybe. But even if they don't, I will. And that's enough." They stopped under a street lamp, light reflecting off the raindrops around them. For a moment, the world seemed still again. No noise, no lies, just love standing in the open. And with that, Keanu finally exhaled the last bit of fear he'd carried for years. He looked at her and said softly, "You were the only truth I ever needed." She smiled, tears blending with rain. "And you were the piece I was always painting, under that rainy night sky, where everything had once fallen apart." They finally found everything that mattered: truth, peace, and each other. The world didn't just fall silent. It listened.